Hello everyone, my name is Danny and you're watching another edition of Saturday Stitching, where any day can feel like Saturday if your stitching is going well. I want to say hello to all of the new viewers and welcome back to all of my subscribers. My socials are Danny and NC on Ravelry, where I post not all of my projects but my significant project. I don't post every dishcloth I make, but if I do something big or try a new technique that works out well, I'll post my results on Ravelry. And I am also Danny and NC on Instagram, which I'm mostly on Instagram just so that I can post pictures to Ravelry, but I do put, if I'm having a good week where I stitch every day, then I'll put a little post every day of this is what I'm working on today and these are the challenges I'm having with it or the thoughts I'm having about it or what have you. So, Stitchy advisory warning on this video. I don't have a lot of progress to show, but I do have some thoughts on the stitching I've done this week. So you're not going to see any FOs this week. You're not going to see a lot of work in progress, but I do want to talk a little bit about what I've worked on this week. And as I've mentioned before, me making these videos every week is sort of my therapy because I don't talk to a lot of people during the week since I am mostly housebound by circumstance. So I don't see a lot of people in my daily life. So I talk to y'all. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, I'm sitting in bed again. As you can see, you see my bedpost, my bedside table where I have all my books and my studying and my needlework. If you could see off camera, there's a big box of yarn and my big yarn closet's right off to the side there. It's just easier. Maybe I'll get back in my other chair where you get to see a nice view of my other yellow wall, but it's just easier for me to record from here, and my camera's not any better whether I'm sitting here or sitting there. So I cleaned up my mess, so I think it's respectable enough for me to sit here. And yes, I have my hair styled like a 5-year-old starting her first day of kindergarten. Again, it's just easier. There's no use in me pretending that I have a fancy backdrop or that I walk around every day with lipstick on and fancy hair. You know, I did this for y'all. These puffs are coming out as soon as I get off the camera because really I walk around with a big wild afro every day and I only fancy it up when I'm leaving the house or getting on the camera for you guys. So, I mentioned last week that I was getting back to my needlework rotation. And I didn't know how I felt about that. Because I'm gone back to school, I don't know if I'm going to get much stitching done. And I did do a lot of studying this week. If you happen to watch my Friday Reads videos, also you notice I didn't do one this week because I didn't get a lot of reading done other than reading medical terminology and about medical insurance and billing. So I didn't do a video yesterday, but I'll probably do one next week. So I'm looking at my notes. As I say every week, I try to keep it under 30 minutes. And I'm really trying to stick to my notes this week. So, the overarching theme of my stitching this week has been full of come to Jesus moments. I had a revelation not in stitching, but in my kitchen, where I didn't really trust my instincts on some meat that I wasn't sure if it had turned bad, and it definitely was bad. And so my initial instinct was to throw it out, and I didn't, and I ended up wasted 2 hours cooking it and still had to throw it out and ended up having takeout for dinner. So after that incident, I decided, fresh off of that incident, it wasn't necessarily a decision, but fresh off of that incident, I started back on my needlework rotation, and then it was like I started looking at these projects, some of them that I hadn't picked up in a month or two. Started looking at them with fresh eyes and realizing, instead of fudging the project, because part of what I tend to do is fudge the project and just go, oh, I don't want to have to rip back, so I will, just add an extra stitch here and add an extra stitch there to fix whatever is wrong. And this time, after coming off the meat incident, I am looking at the projects with new eyes and realizing, oh, I'm not happy with this, and I'm going to be stitching this the whole time, saying to myself that I'm not happy with it. So why don't I just frog it and start over, or do what I want to do with it to make it better? So, starting with my Sunday project. If you're new here, I have a list of projects that correspond to each of my family members, or on extra days it may be a gift day or a technique I want to try or something like that, so that I'm doing multiple projects each week. This was supposed to help me not get bored and to help me finish more projects, but I'm not so sure about that right now. So the first project is the fluffy lap afghan that I was making with some discontinued Red Heart Symphony. And the original modification, there's several people on Ravelry who've made this afghan with Red Heart Symphony, and they doubled the yarn. Well, I didn't figure out till I was about 4 inches in that they doubled the yarn, but I was trying to tell myself, oh, I like it, it's nice and thin and floaty with just a single strand, and I don't like working with double strands anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it that way. Well, then, after it sat for a month or whatever, and I picked it up this past Sunday, and I looked at it and I felt it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to be working on this for another 12, 15 inches and thinking it's not heavy enough. So what did I do? I had this much done the last time you looked at it. Yeah, this is where I am now. I basically cast on all over again. And yes, I've cast on with 2 strands. I have 4 balls of this yarn, and the woman, there's one woman who's made like 15 of these with symphony yarn, and she said she uses about 2.5 balls of yarn. So that means I would end up with like 1.5 balls of this yarn that I don't know what to do with. So my initial idea was that, I'll just use 1 ball of yarn and make 4 afghans, or you just use 2 balls of yarn and make 2 afghans, or whatever. Just use it single stranded so I could get more afghans out of it, maybe get 3 afghans out of it, because I was trying to be stingy with the yarn because it's discontinued and all that other stuff. But now that I've looked at the project, it's like, you know what, this yarn was a gift for Mother's Day, back when my husband and my kids didn't know much about yarn, because I was just getting back into the whole knitting and crocheting thing myself 10 years ago. And so they bought this, because people who don't know anything about yarn, if you've gotten gifts of yarn from people in your life, people who don't know anything about yarn, they go for the fuzzy, the furry, that looks interesting, the ribbon yarns, that looks like it should be a gift, that looks fancy. And so this yarn's been sitting in my closet for 10 years, and I didn't know what to do with it because I wasn't experienced enough. even though I've known how to knit and crochet since I was 10, I've kind of stayed at beginner level for all these years because I've never really stretched myself. Part of it was, in the days before the internet, I didn't have access to a lot of knitting books and knitting magazines and stuff like that. And then 10 years ago when I picked it back up and I was buying knitting magazines and had the internet, I was still too scared to try anything really complicated. And now, another come to Jesus moment, 2017 Danny as opposed to 1997 Danny. 2017 Danny is like, okay, I'm just going to try whatever I want to try. And if it's hard, it's hard, and I'm going to push through it. So, all that to say, the Sunday project, I recast that on. So, and if I only get one blanket out of the yarn, and then I have a ball and a half left, I'll take that ball and a half and turn it into a scarf or something. Not that there's much use for scarves here in my part of the country, but that's what I'll do with it. Okay, and as we know, I keep that project in the little folding IKEA type box with the cloth bottom. Okay, Monday, I'm not even going to show. Monday is my daughter's socks. I'm doing 2 at a time socks. It's my first time doing 2 at a time socks. I'm still happy with that technique. It's taken me forever to knit those, so I think I maybe got half an inch done on those, so I'm not even going to drag those out of my bag. Okay, Tuesday is Sydney, her Avatar Afghan. That's the only thing she wants out of me. Remember, I made her the halter top and she didn't really want it, and I've got to repurpose it. The only thing she really wants is the Avatar Afghan because she is a big Legend of Korra fan. So, and she threw a little shade my way about, me ever finishing that Afghan. So that stoked my fire as far as I'm going to finish this Afghan. So, I forgot to say, hey Maya. Hey Maya. Okay, and so for Sydney's Afghan was a little bit of a kerfluffle because I was like, okay, I'll pull out Sydney's Afghan, which I have not picked up her Afghan for ages. I'm going to pull it out. Well, I couldn't find where I put it. How do I lose an Afghan in this house? For those of you friends with me on Facebook, I post briefly on Facebook. I only have one place to put my yarn. So how on earth did I lose the Afghan and lose the square? And it's like, okay, I know it's in the back of the yarn closet somewhere, but I don't feel like pulling all these bags out because this yarn closet is literally this wide, but it goes back. So there's, this stuff stacked behind stuff. So I was supposed to be studying. The whole idea was I'm going to pull the project out because I'm able to read and study and read and knit at the same time. And my textbook has a thing where the robot reads out loud to you, so that helps as well. So I was going to do that while I was reading the text and studying the vocabulary. So I didn't want to waste time by spending 30 minutes pulling crap out of the closet. So I said, well, the Afghan is worked in 4 squares, so I'm going to go ahead and, because I was thinking of, this is another come to Jesus moment, I was thinking of frogging the fire square. Okay, there's 4 squares: fire, water, air, and earth. And so it's an Afghan made of 4 large squares, and it's going to end up being like a queen size blanket. And I tried this. If you're new here, you know that I've tried casting this thing on like 5 different techniques because I just kept getting bored, or I wasn't happy, or it just wasn't moving fast enough for me. But I've done another big project in the meantime, and I think I've managed my expectations of how fast the project needs to go, so I'm not as bored as I used to. Anyway, this is where I am so far in the fire square. Now I know also that I've messed up on the chart. Somewhere in here I've got too many black stitches somewhere. But this is where I am with this. And see all that mess back there? This is where I am with this. But as I said, on Tuesday when I went to work on it, I could not find it. So I said, let me go ahead and start on the water square instead. Well, I also was thinking, you know what? I think I'd really rather single crochet this instead of Tunisian crochet. Even though I bought the Tunisian crochet hook, I'm happy with how the Tunisian crochet turned out for the Wonder Woman blanket. But I don't think I just, the whole time I was working on this is like I messed up the chart on there. I really should pull it out. And I'm not sure that I want to do it in Tunisian crochet because I'm not sure. My last Tunisian crochet had a bunch of ends in the back that were a mess, and I ended up basically crocheting a whole other Afghan piece the same size as that. If you see my Wonder Woman blanket video, you know what I'm talking about, to cover up the mess in the back. And so I didn't want to do that again. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I should do it single crochet. So that is what I'm doing. And y'all know I don't use fancy bags, but just for y'all, as I was looking for this, I pulled out a bag and put this project in this bag just for y'all. This is a purse that is a throwback to late 90s. There was a brief trend of purses with your initial on it, and my sister got me one, and I carried this one for a little while, but it started to get, if you can see, the handle is just about to fall off, and so I stopped carrying it because the handle is just about to fall off. And if you really look close, because I think it's faux leather or whatever, the D is starting to flake or whatever, so it doesn't look that great anymore. But I thought it would be fun to put the project in this bag because it's blue, it's 2 shades of blue, and the water square is 2 shades of blue. And again, this is another realization because the original project called for single. I didn't get far on it. It's still kind of wide. Because you can see my hands aren't even, see? It's still kind of wide. So it's still gonna cover a bed when I'm done. But this is another case of, I went all the way around the world because I was like, I don't want to do single crochet. So I tried half double crochets. I tried Tunisian crochet. I thought maybe I was going to knit it and duplicate stitch the logo on the top and whatever. And because I looked at the notes in Ravelry, everybody making comments, and the original pattern called for single crochets. You hold the unused yarn all the way along with you, and yes, some of it's going to show through. You can probably see it. You can probably see that dark blue showing through the light blue. You can see it really good right there. But you can see the dark blue showing through on both sides. But you still hold it to maintain the thickness so that you have the same thickness all the way through. You hold it all the way through, And the logo, when you switch to the dark blue, the logo stitches are done in a cluster stitch. And everybody before I even started the project, everybody in the comments was like, oh, I hate that cluster stitch. It makes it wobbly. It makes it pull. It makes it whatever. Or I'm not doing it in single crochet. I'm doing it in half double crochet. Everybody changed the pattern. So I felt like, oh, all these different people did it different. Maybe I should follow their wisdom and do it different. And I tried all these different ways, and I was not happy and kept putting the project down. And this time, when I picked it back up, because this project, between the red square and the blue square, and I still have to do the same squares for Chloe's blanket, because she's having the same blanket but in reverse colors, where Sydney wants the traditional light background dark blue logo. Chloe wants the dark background and the water is going to be in the light blue here. So I'm going to be doing this project twice, basically. And I went all the way around the world trying different ways to do it. And when I came back to the project this week, it was like, you know what? Why don't I just do it the way the pattern's written and see if I'm okay with that? So that's where I am with that now. I'm just doing it the way the pattern's written. And hopefully it'll turn out fine. Okay, so that was Tuesday. Wednesday, I picked up the surfer sweater, and again, I'm not pulling that out because I got about that much done on it. Okay, but I'm mentioning it because it leads to a larger issue that I seem to be having with my needlework, which is I made notes. You know, you have notes that you make on Ravelry, and I do make notes on the Ravelry project of, big things that I've done. But sometimes you make little notes as you're going along, to remember, when I pick this back up, I need to work the pattern stitch on this row because the pattern stitch is only worked every other row or whatever. Just little notes that you make. And I tend to have little just scrap pieces of paper, little pieces of mail and stuff like that I jot these notes down on, which is fine if I'm coming back to that same project tomorrow. But if I'm not coming, or sometimes I'll have a notebook. I'll have a notebook like this that I have my notes in, and there'll be, I don't know if you can see, but like on this notebook, there's this little space here of unused, and it must be the hippy dippy child left in me or something, but it drives me crazy to have, like this slide. These are the notes that I had made for last Saturday's video, and as you can see, the majority of this page is blank. That drives me insane. I don't know why. I can't leave a piece of paper like this that with all that empty space that could be written in. So when I go to take notes and I'm sitting here, this is my little area where I do everything, and I go to take a note, whether it's to write a confirmation number for something I paid over the phone or something like that, I'll grab this notebook that has 2 inches of space left to write in it, and I'll just like draw a line and I'll make notes, what have you. And I do the same thing with the projects, but then if I let the project sit for 3 weeks, like I did with Chloe's sweater, I can't remember which one of these notebooks, because I have notebooks and notebooks and notebooks and notebooks. You get my drift. I've got notebooks of all different shapes and sizes, and I've got 3 more that I didn't even pick up over here. Notebooks of different shapes and sizes that have been used for various things, and I don't know which one of them. So then I have to think, okay, what was I doing at that time? Okay, was that around the time that I was studying for such and such a class? So I probably wrote it at the bottom of my chapter 2 medical terminology notes. Let me turn to that page. So all this is to say that when I was working on the sweater. I didn't get much done on the sweater, but my come to Jesus moment, I finally figured out where I was on the sweater. But it took more time than it should, and it cut into my knitting time. But my come to Jesus moment for that was, I need to get a notebook that's just devoted to my knitting. Because I have, like, this notebook is my notes for my YouTube videos, okay? And this notebook is my bullet journal. And this notebook is notes I make when I'm trying to consider classes, and it's got all my, not notes for class itself, but notes like, this is the password for my college email, and this is the schedule of stuff I've taken in the past, so I know not to take that again. You know, just the little notes that I jot down about college stuff, but not the actual classes themselves. You know, this is my notebook for stuff when I'm doing freelance stuff for my sister. This is the notebook she gave me, so this is that notebook. So I have different notebooks for different, and of course I have a notebook for my medical terminology class where I'm actually taking notes for the classes, because writing the terminology down helps me remember what it helps me memorize if I physically write it down. So why have I not ever bought a notebook for my projects in progress? I do not know. But, you know, I'm going to go to the dollar store next time I get to leave the house, and I'm going to get a notebook where I can write these things down. You know, just like in the style of my bullet journal, you know, make notes of this is this project, and so that I can remember that I changed the hook, or that I measured the gauge and what the gauge was, because I don't always feel like pulling up Ravelry to find these things out. Yes, I got a little heated and crazy there. So then I worked on Thursday. I worked a little bit on my son Isaac's remote caddy. Again, not worth pulling up. Got about that much done. I'm hoping to get that done soon, because I'm happy with the way it's turning out, but quite honestly, I'm tired of looking at it. There's some projects where they're really fun to work on, and then there's other projects where it's like, ugh, I just want this done because I want it made. I want the end product. I want it made, but I'm not necessarily having fun working on it. So even though the stitch, I like the stitch. I like the way the stitch looks, and it's easy to memorize. I'm just not really having fun working on it. So that was my stitching this week. After this week, I think I'm pretty sure I'm going to be semi-monogamous instead of going back to my needlework rotation, because the other realization I had this week is that I don't think the rotation is necessarily working for me. I like having a list of projects, a list of whips that I have, so that I don't continue to start new things without being conscious of it. You know, if I'm in the mood to stitch something, I need to pick up something that's already been started, rather than constantly starting new things and then just having a bunch of stuff out there. You know, because it really does weigh on me to have a bunch of whips that, you know, I never get back to. So, and I am going to be monogamous for the next month or so at least. And so there won't be much progress. I don't know if I'll do a video next week. This is your heads up. I don't know if I'm going to do a video next week, because next weekend is going to be my girls' weekend with my best friend. So I don't know if I'm going to have time to record a video. Number one. Number two, I'm going to prepare for that weekend. I'm going to be studying a lot. So I don't know, so that I can get ahead of time, so I won't have to take anything over there with me to do homework over the weekend. So I doubt that I'll get a whole lot of stitching done. Number three, I have another project, as you saw me swatching. I'm starting another project, the Wonder Woman blanket. The father of the little girl who was the recipient of that blanket has asked me to make a lap blanket with the logo of his favorite team on it. So since they are good friends, I am going to make that blanket, and that's probably, so I'm going to push that up as a priority because football season is nigh upon us, I'm assuming. I know the high schools are playing football, so I'm assuming NFL football's already started. So I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to show you the pattern, and I'm not going to tell you the team, because if I do videos, I'm just going to go show you the progress and see how long it takes y'all to figure out which team logo I'm making. That amuses me, even if it doesn't amuse you. So we are at 30 minutes. That means there is no time for any chit chat, which I tend to just ramble when I try to do chit chat anyway. So if I don't see you in next week, hopefully I will see you in 2 weeks with some completed, or at least some works in progress. Thank you again for sticking around with me this long, and I hope that all of your stitching goes well. And if you are anywhere in Texas, I hope things are getting cleaned up for you. If you were in the path of Harvey, and if you are in the path of Irma, which is destined to hit most places most places in the United States on Monday, I hope you don't get hit too hard. I'll have you in my prayers. And that's it. See you soon. Bye.